got to supervise and lead up to 35 people every 90 days. About 120 people in that year of time that I did that at 19.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of The Download. It's great to be back with you from Tier 4 Advisors headquarters. Richard Dunavent is in our studios, longtime friend of Tier 4. Thank you so much for being here.
No problem. Glad to be here. Thanks for
Richard
having me.
in the building.
Great to have you. Great to have you. Joined by our trusty steed, as always, VP of Marketing, Joel, the travel trailer lover and golfer extraordinaire, Andersen.
Always a pleasure.
There you
Always
go.
a pleasure.
There you go. Thanks for being here. For those of you who tune in regularly, it's been a little while. Some of us have been out of town, and we're working on scheduling some guests, but it's great to be back publishing some great podcast content for you. Joined by, like I said, Richard, who's been a longtime friend of Tier 4. Richard, do you want to introduce yourself to the audience tuning in from all over the world?
Yeah, you got it. So I'm Richard Dunavent, Director of IT at Conisus. Conisus is a boutique communications and analytics company positioned in the biopharma space. We provide efficacy data on cancer medications and speaker engagements. We bridge the gap between the pharma space and the healthcare providers. At Conisus, I oversee infrastructure, security, and support.
Awesome. Sounds great. Joel, introduce yourself to the group.
Sure. VP of Marketing at Tier 4. I can't believe it's been over 3.5 years. Like, where has the time gone? Time has flown.
3.5 years since joining Tier 4.
It's been an absolute blast. Like 70 plus VIP events, traveling the country, talking to great people like Richard, building relationships. It's been awesome.
Been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Seriously feels like way more than 3 years.
Right? Yep.
Time flies when you're having fun, right? Speaking of time, I tell you what, Jake Sherrill, founder and chairman of Tier 4, founded this thing almost 9 years ago. That's crazy because on one side it feels like about 50 years. On the other side it feels like a week. But we've done a lot of very fun, complex, nasty, hairy projects globally, domestically, a lot of easy projects as well. Simple, I should say, not easy, but relatively simple in the scope. And just want to thank all of our clients, all of our employees, and all of our partners for those successful 9 years that we've had here in helping expedite and simplify a lot of the procurement process for our clients. By the way, as an introduction to who we are here at Tier 4, we help with data center, telecom, managed services, and security projects. Our fifth category of expertise is also emerging tech. So we get a lot of IT professionals like Richard who might say, hey, we're looking to implement AI in our call center. Okay, great. What does that mean? I don't really know. Try and help them make sense of that. Or, I've been tasked by finance to cut out cost, or I need to migrate to the cloud, or I need to look at a better DR setup rather than, older servers in a closet somewhere in our office. We're looking for DR as a service or something like that. Our goal is to help you make sense of what that project should be, what vendors do what best, maintain a competitive environment through the process, and shrink what is normally a 6 to 12 month time frame, usually if done internally, down to, in some cases, 1, 2, 3 months if the client wants to move that fast. So not here to sell you anything, but that's kind of who we are at Tier 4. Should we talk a little bit about the podcast, who we are here at The Download?
I mean, ultimately, the purpose of the podcast is to bring together thought leadership from Jake, from all of our featured guests, CIOs, CTOs, directors of IT, VPs of infrastructure, folks within the IT community that we can learn and grow from, ultimately to be able to learn from each other to help us run and grow our businesses. So that's the purpose of the podcast.
So we got a lot of folks that tune in that are your peers, CIOs, CTOs, VPs of whatever within the IT organization. I think we also have a fair amount of folks that are, maybe high school, college, or the first maybe stop or two of their career. And a lot of them, candidly, probably want to, follow your career path. You've been successful in the IT world with your career. So let's talk a little bit about that. Tell us about your first job. Now, the first job that we talk about, you've tuned in, you've heard us ask this question, but what was your first job to begin working?
So I was very fortunate to not ever have to, and it's not that it's a negative, but to start in the food business or something that, most people try to get their feet into, just first trying to earn a paycheck or get out there and doing something. And I was actually able to get into the IT space and technology at a very young age. It was honestly about 7th or 8th grade when I started getting into IT, I was fixing family members' computers, friends of the family, different things like that going around. And then I decided, hey, I'd like to know a little bit more. How do I do this? And while I was in school, I would see the school's network administrator, fixing computers, whatever, coming in and out of the classroom and things. And so I would just kind of peek over the shoulder and watch and see what he was doing. And I would just pick his brain every now and again. I'd go home and keep studying and reading and trying to learn. And then I'd come back and ask him more questions. He kept saying, well, why do you keep asking me all these questions? And I was like, well, I'd just like to get into this. I like what you do. I'd like to see, how to do it. And so I just kept bugging the guy, to a point that I would just say, eventually, how do I get into this? How can we start like a program for kids? I think I know some friends of mine that might want to get into this. And what was interesting at the time for me was I actually played 2 or 3 sports, so I was like all year round with different things. And so in between seasons, it was kind of like, well, when's the right time to get into something like this, something else after school? And so it ended up being a couple years, passed. And just before I got out of middle school, they allowed me to stay after school for an hour or two and just shadow him on the basis that as long as they could, gain trust and understand that I'm not going to goof around or any of that. And we're dealing with equipment here, just like you would in any business now as enterprise for a school district. So I shadowed the guy. He taught me how to do Cat 6. Well, excuse me, Cat 5 back then, but taught me how to do Cat 5 cables, 568A and B pair sequencing, different things like that. IPX, SPX, which was old Novell networks prior to Active Directory. So I learned how to do all that stuff in my teens.
Awesome.
That morphed into high school, and I ended up, they said, hey, we have a program in the summer. Would you like to be a part of that and actually help recruit other kids to do this? We have a big project. We need to re-image all the machines in the entire school district for 4 schools, rewire all 4 schools from the old 10 base T token ring, connections, and change that into Cat 5e. So I recruited kids, taught them all how to do it. I was the foreman of the job, so to speak.
Nice.
And was fortunate enough to not, for my first job, not make minimum wage in that respect, and actually make just a little bit more than minimum, and actually have a leadership role in the same piece of it. So from there, that just kind of really got my mind going. Like, I think this is kind of the trajectory that I need for my life. So from there, just about every position I've held after that was in some sort of a leadership role.
That's awesome. And I would say also, by the way, I see a lot of folks that are now in leadership positions or still, turning the wrench within IT, but loving what they do. And the first year or 2 or 3, candidly, they were probably not making a lot of money, if any at all, but they were learning and they were building their resume, and it helped them get to where they are today.
Right.
So did that parlay just directly into your career? Did you take some time off and go to school, certifications?
Yeah, so I definitely, I did go into school from there, and went in for computer networking. While I was in school, needed to make money just like anybody in school. And so while I was in school, I actually sought out a position at UPS, interesting enough, just doing unloading and loading trucks on third shift kind of thing. And it was grunt work. It was dirty. It was grueling. It sucked.
You didn't have to go to the gym, though. That's right?
I did not. That's
you go to work, you get yoked out, you go home and sleep. You don't got to go to the gym.
You must have talked to some former employees there because...
I know the drill. Yeah.
Because that was the joke. It was like, hey, it saves on gym membership and you get paid to do it. But,
without a doubt.
Man, it was hot and dirty. And, they kept throwing out different incentives like, hey, if you take this test while you're at UPS or something at the time, you can earn $1 more or whatever it was. And I just wasn't interested, but I was looking around. I was like, there's some people walking around in here that aren't dirty and stinky. They're actually wearing nice clothes and they're walking around with a clipboard. How do I get that job? Mm-hmm. So I reached out to one of the main guys of the whole building. I just saw him walking by. I said, hey, excuse me, do you have a second? And they were like, you have a problem? Because that was kind of uncommon. And I said, no, actually, I want that guy's job. How do I get his job?
Nice.
And so from there, they were like, if you're serious, okay, go through that. So while I was in school, I actually had a managerial position, got to supervise and lead up to 35 people every 90 days. So about 120 people in that year of time that I did that at 19.
So let's talk about IT as a whole. Obviously, you've done a lot of different things. You've seen a lot of different stuff ever since programming the Oregon Trail back in the day. I'm just kidding. But what do you love most about IT with what you're doing today?
I kind of had to figure out what made me tick, and it was really just making things talk to each other. And so I guess from there, just being able to mentor someone into that passion, if that's their passion, that's what I really get out of it now. I enjoy it.
Yeah. And so when you talk about that, you're enjoying that. What would you say an accomplishment has been that you would want to share with the public? I mean, something that you look at and you're like, not a proud moment, maybe more of a humbling moment, something that you're grateful for that you experienced. What type of accomplishment out there is something that you're pretty pleased with?
I would say in that realm or that avenue, being able to see good people start off in a lower level position that maybe they didn't have any idea what their trajectory was, but after kind of working with them and kind of honing that in and actually being able to see what their strengths are, getting them to a position that they never expected as fast as they could.
Yeah.
I've been able to do that with a few people that I would consider friends to this day. And they're better for it, which is awesome. And I don't really want to give myself credit on that, but that's one thing that I will say that I enjoy.
That's great to see, and I think what goes around comes around in that sense, right?
I would agree.
You never know. One day, maybe we're working for those people.
That's right.
Right? They started working for us. Maybe one day they're the ones that give us an opportunity down the road. You never know.
There's definitely a point in my career to where I determined that, wait a second, I don't have to know how to do everything. I just know I need to know how to navigate the landscape for someone else to be able to do it.
Let's talk about some of the challenges, right? Life has challenges too. Talk about a challenge, something that you had, a roadblock in front of you, you overcame, and you're proud of that you're on the other side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say probably one of the more challenging times of the career has been trying to convince other people of doing things that really will better the company from either a security standpoint or maybe need to do perspective that they just don't see eye to eye, and actually being in the hot seat or in the position where if something goes wrong, it's you. And so you're in a kind of a weird spot to say, hey, wait, this isn't just me, it's everybody, but you know that you'll be blamed for it despite the fact, it was something that you're trying to push out.
Yeah. Let's speak to that for a second. Where is this thing going with, ransomware and phishing attacks and all the other things that are coming into place? I mean, at what point when IT goes to finance or the office of the CEO or president, whoever it might be, and says, hey, we need to go spend X amount per month with a managed security services provider, or we need to go out and get a SIM tool, or we need to go out and do something in the sense of security and compliance. When is that going to become, top of mind in the budget cycle?
Yeah. So I think it's been a long time coming, honestly. There's been this whole idea of a general budget or something that's, here's what we have to allocate, or here's what we need to do for security, and this is our spend, and we can't go outside of those parameters. But what I'm actually seeing now and have seen in the last few years is this directive of it's a little bit more fluid, I think. Everyone needs to be a little bit more reactive and know you can plan and budget for things, but at the same time be able to be flexible, to be reactive if something did occur, or if you needed to be proactive and plan ahead. Mm-hmm. So like you said, with an MSSP, being able to hire somebody like that and say, okay, maybe we don't want to pay for, quote, an expert in here and have it only be one person. Those people are humans and they need to take days off, but maybe it's a little bit better for our setup that we have a team of people that's outside of here that do it for us 24/7. Mm-hmm. So if somebody takes off, there's always somebody behind, and we don't have to incur the cost of all those different bodies and personnel tax and everything associated with that.
I don't know how many projects we're doing at the moment, but some of the ones that we are doing are having the conversation of that exact point, right? Not that we want to fire people, not that we want to get rid of headcount, but end users are admitting the fact that they're having challenges finding and retaining talent in the first place. It's hard to compete with the larger Fortune, call it 500s, who are able to spend the money and even go out and continue to train these folks and retain them for a long time for that mid-cap type of company, right? And that's where the popularity of a lot of this MSSP and outsourcing is really coming into play. It's not because it's a major cost savings, but you can press a little bit of the parachute button, so to speak, or pull the parachute cord and say to a vendor partner, hey, a lot of this stuff, we can't, place the talent. We can't retain the talent to do a lot of this work. Take it from us. And again, these are people that, it's like having a general contractor or going and deciding to build a home yourself. You and I could probably, and a lot of folks that are tuning in, you're smart enough to probably figure out how to build a home yourself. You go out and gather all the subcontractors, maybe even design it yourself, even though you've never designed a home before. But I get it, right? We're all kind of tinkerers of sort. We want to do certain things. There's a time and a place, though, to accept. When time is money, or if time is of the essence, there's a time and a place to accept that there are other people out there that have been doing this 5 years, 15 years, 30 years, and kind of call in the lifeline, so to speak, of, hey, you're an expert in this. Why don't you take this over? And a lot of that, candidly, is a lot of the blocking and tackling within IT, the commoditized based work. A lot of clients are not outsourcing the secret sauce, the stuff that is special to that organization. But a lot of the blocking and tackling of the organization, makes a lot of sense in looking elsewhere.
Yeah, and I've seen over the years to where, and historically, it's made more sense, long ago to not hire a big team, have an MSP. And then I've seen to where that's changed to where the cost of the MSP, and we're talking just an MSP, not an MSSP for security specifically, but I've seen to where it made sense to just bring those people internally. And then, of course, with the kind of proliferation of all the security stuff in the last 10 years especially, I've seen it to where, you've got to go back outside again, externally, and find it. And what's interesting, and you've probably seen this with some of the MSSPs out there, is that it's hard to retain that talent, to your point. And some of those people just go out and work independently for themselves, but maybe they're doing work as an independent contractor for an MSSP.
That's right.
So it just depends on what's more lucrative for them, and you kind of how you outpace the industry.
Yeah, no, that's great. But as you're seeing some of this stuff move to public hyperscalers, obviously the outsourcing to MSPs, MSSPs, just the overall kind of like IT industry 2021 kind of mid-year, halfway through the year, where do you see some of these things going? Where do you see some of the transformational projects taking place? Where do you see some of the Fortune 500 companies innovating? What are your thoughts, just I guess, with just kind of a state of the union of IT at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So, a lot of it really depends on the industry that you're in, first and foremost, because there can be regulating factors that kind of dictate the avenue or the direction that you go. Sometimes you can't be in a public cloud. Sometimes you could have a private cloud. Sometimes it's got to be through a, kind of what I call a earthly or terrestrially data center that you've managed yourself, as opposed to the cloud concept. But, again, to the point of the industry that you're in, if you're in a highly regulated environment, maybe it makes sense for you to have something that's kind of on your own, either that maybe your team doesn't manage, but maybe an outside group manages for you on your behalf. And sometimes it can be a lot more cost effective to do that because of the operational cost of the cloud providers. It just never stops. It keeps on adding up. Now, you can project out and you can say, okay, I think we're going to do this for 3 years, but that's become so difficult now to even go out 3 years. You don't know what it's going to mean for you in 3 years. It's, everything's happening so quickly now that 1 year, sometimes it feels like too long to commit to something. So monthly helps in those aspects to be able to go to, say a cloud infrastructure type setup on a monthly basis, but you have that flexibility.
That's fair. Is there a day, whether it's in a year or 5 or 10 or 20 years, where startups, companies that have been around 5 to 20 years, and then legacy companies, 30 plus year environments, is there a day where, companies don't own servers or physical hardware ever again?
Absolutely. I've been in an environment kind of like that. Now, of course, you're never going to get away from the network aspect. Everybody has to have connectivity, whether it's wireless or plugged in some manner. And that's kind of the interesting spot, because that is a big environment and market in and of itself. Just making sure that you have that set up correctly locally on-prem is huge. Doesn't mean that you have to have anything else on site on-prem. Now, printers, things like that, of course. But from a data center perspective, it makes no sense, frankly, to have anything in your possession on-prem.
Yeah.
Now, again, if you have like your own data center and that you have your stuff stored in, it depends on really what the need is. If it's very legacy kind of equipment that it just doesn't make sense, or or is too difficult to try to host on something more modern platform. But frankly, for the last 5 years, at least in my career, it's been this massive push to not have anything on-prem. And it just didn't make any sense to do it. You can't keep the power on, you can't keep, cooling, you can't keep any of the environmental resources managed properly enough 24/7 for that to make sense.
So as we talk a little bit about some of the outsourcing models and things like that, obviously, the startup companies today who are cloud native is the term that's used. Makes a lot of sense. What type of experience have you had though with an organization that was not cloud native, right? They had all their hooks and they had all their desires in a more physical world. What would you say to somebody who's maybe battling through that a little bit right now? Someone that maybe just inherited a new environment, they just got a new job somewhere. There's a lot of dust in their data closet in a few of their offices around the country, or maybe they have a colo environment with hardware that's 1 to 13 years old, right? And they're trying to make sense of all that. Any advice to someone out there that might be going through some of that?
Yeah, so I've been in those positions as well, and one of the things you can't do is just be so afraid that you don't do anything, and that you don't make any change. Best thing possible, if it's not documented, of course, to be able to obtain that information, be able to try to figure out what's going on, figure it out on your own, go ask the people that have been there if they are there, or do a deep dive on your own. You've got to have it mapped out at least what's going on for the business, what really makes the business tick. Because, of course, if you go to make a change and all of a sudden it's irreparable, you can't go back, you've really shot yourself in the foot. But you should definitely be in the position or drive to try to get that stuff out of your possession. It just doesn't make sense to keep holding on to it.
Yeah, and I'll share some experience. And we've done a few hundred of these now in the last 9 years, and a lot more projects in other categories as well. But when you talk about inheriting an environment, obviously documentation is key. Not all environments are documented, and obviously so sometimes that's an uphill battle. But also looking at individualized workloads and seeing where you can pluck things easily. Right. A lot of the transition and migration strategies in being transformational is low-lying fruit. The term low-lying fruit, meaning go pluck a lot of the stuff that's easy to do, and maybe look at migrating that, whether that's to the cloud or a managed colo environment or even a new hardware environment that it is you decide to own your own metal.
Right.
Over and above that, I will share that a lot of the transformational stuff sometimes is easier to do in a DR environment rather than a production environment. Right. Production is the lights on, businesses running on that, what have you. A lot of folks will actually dip their toe into some transformational projects by doing secondary or tertiary environments and outsourcing that. Now, again, the good news is if your DR environment works in the cloud, let's just say as a DRaaS, DR as a service platform, and then when the time comes to then transform your production, assuming that you've tested it and it works, that's a nice thing to have through the transition of a production environment.
Yeah, you've minimized your concerns or issues internally on that because you've already gotten 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and you can actually make that transition a lot easier.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that's great. Got a lot of partners in that area. If you ever have any questions or desires to have that conversation, tier4advisors.com. Reach out to your local regional president. We've got about 20 of them around the country, or folks that you might know within Tier 4 Advisors. So, Richard, with that said, what was your favorite Tier 4 Advisors VIP event that you've attended? You've come to a few.
I have. So while the pheasant hunt is the honored tradition nowadays, I will say that the Porsche experience,
another one for Porsche,
probably hands down the best.
Yeah, pretty unforgettable.
It is to be able to put your hands on that many vehicles in one day and kind of learn about them and actually drive them and learn how to do that. That was pretty cool.
All right. With that said, let's move on. We do a segment, as you're probably well aware, those of you who have tuned in multiple times, best thing I've seen all week. Joel, we're going to start with you. What's the best thing that you have seen all week?
Royal Caribbean launched a test cruise with about 600 plus passengers to see how it went. They had all the guests were vaccinated. They had a member from the CDC join as well to go through a simulated cruise experience. I am a huge fan of cruising. I've been on all the different brands. I've been on Celebrity, Royal Caribbean, Carnival, sorry, not all of them. I've been on many of them.
There you go.
My wife and I were planning to do a 10-year anniversary cruise, and that was put on hold due to COVID. But so it's nice to see that these are opening back up again. Have you been on a cruise, Richard?
I have.
How was your experience?
I took a deal,
Oh,
and that was probably not the right way to do it.
Because
And,
I love cruising.
I
It's
love
an
it. Don't
absolute
get me wrong.
blast.
It was fun, but I took a deal, and let's just say the waters were very choppy.
Oh,
But I
wow.
also went for an anniversary. It was an anniversary cruise,
Okay.
and it was in October. And so, if you know anything about the Caribbean,
Hurricane
in October,
season.
Yeah, got a
it's
little
like
dicey.
yeah, it's a little nuts, but it was fun.
Good stuff. Richard, best thing that you saw all week?
Yeah, so Father's Day was just a couple days ago. I'll tell you, that morning, so I've got an 11-month-old that's my fourth. My wife, he's kind of in a mimicking stage right now to where he blah, 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 and mimics. But my wife had just said, I love you to him. And as I walked around the corner, he saw me and he says, I love you. But it wasn't as clear as that, of course, but it was like clear to a parent. And I thought that was the greatest thing I saw all week.
That's
was
awesome.
pretty cool.
That's a great
That's
thing.
great.
I wasn't actually going to share this because I always share stuff about youth sports, but I got two things that I saw all week, and I'll go ahead and share it. We'll post a picture on this, but had a chance to, with my grandfather-in-law, go on a fishing expedition in Alaska. And in one day, this guy's been fishing and hunting his entire life. Okay, so let's just say since he was a kid, the last 80 years, he caught his two biggest fish in one day.
Oh, wow.
And I was on that boat to witness it. It was a 58-pound halibut and about a 23-pound king salmon. We'll post a picture,
Nice.
or maybe even a video. We'll see what we got. Later that day, we played in a very pivotal game, a win-or-go-home game in the state championship. My son, complete game, 6 innings pitched for the W, and that was pretty cool. All right, Joel. Let's go ahead and continue on here. You want to go ahead and take the next category?
Yeah, for sure. So, Richard, we've known you for a long time, well before my time even at Tier 4. Do you remember the first time we even got in contact with you or how you were first introduced to Tier 4?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of your main guys, Sam, he reached out to
Sam
me.
G.
Yeah, it was actually Sam.
One of the OGs.
Yeah,
Sam G, the OG.
That's right.
All right.
He reached out to me. He and I had actually had beginnings of a relationship just before he left a place before here, and he was coming on to Tier 4 and reached out and said, "Hey, I'm at Tier 4 now. Let's have lunch. Let's talk." And so it kind of from there. I think I ended up meeting Jake like probably a week later, and the rest is history.
Nice. What was it that kind of stood out that made you say like, yeah, like I'll use you guys for an upcoming project? Do you remember what that
Sure.
was that kind of clicked inside your brain?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had been looking for, I think it was a couple ISPs or something, just a couple circuits at the time, and it was just like an exhausting experience to try to go out and get numbers from 3, 4, 5 different companies, and then be able to bring them back in, pare them down, say, okay, here's the 3 best, and then go inside internally and have a million meetings about it, and no one ever make a decision. It was during that phase that was like grueling, so I ended up meeting Sam. He's like, I think I got an answer to your problem, and it was Tier 4. And when I remember, Jake, when we first met, I think one of the things that you said, it doesn't cost anything. And I was like, what is it like? Do we have like an agreement? I don't.
Yeah, I was like,
So
well, what's
how's
the
this
catch?
work?
Right?
Yeah, like, wait a minute, what does that make sense?
I just had one of those people today. 9 years in business, and someone was like, "What's the catch?"
Yeah, that
On
was
an
my
introductory call today, as a matter of fact.
Yeah,
So,
like what? So what's the? So are you guys an ISP? Like what?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
okay, but no, it was awesome. That was it made that experience very easy, and since then especially.
And let me hit on that just for those of you tuning in and you're curious about Tier 4, what is the catch? So you have 2 choices when you buy things in IT. Okay, you can go direct, call 1-800-AT&T, 1-800-Comcast, whatever it is, and you buy direct, or you go through what is called the wholesale channel. The wholesale channel works with partners like Tier 4. So what we do is we basically say, hey, we're going to make money on the back end from the vendor because of the way the economics work within the deal. But we're going to give you a block of hours, 50 hours, 100 hours, 300 hours up front for free of engineering resources, chasing down the quotes, making sure the quotes are correct, making sure that the competitive environment stays accurate, things like this, expediting the project. And if all goes as planned, we'll make our money on the back end from the vendor, which is how we don't charge the client for our services. A little bit of a different model, but something that's been around for a couple decades in telecom. We've been one of the kind of drivers in some other categories like data center and cloud and stuff like that. But to your point, when we said it was free, you're probably thinking, wow, that's unique.
Well, and I think another big catch to this, guys, is that it's important probably to mention that because of the wholesale channel, being a channel partner like that with some of these vendors, you're able to get the prices down. You're able to get the prices sometimes cheaper than what you would be even if you were to go direct to somebody, because you've got those agreements up front or in the back or whatever. And it almost wins every single time. And in fact, I don't know that I've ever seen it not win.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And again, those contracts are direct still from the end user to the vendor, right? So it's not that the client is signing with Tier 4 advisors and Tier 4 advisors is white labeling Verizon. That's not the structure. But what we do is we sit on your side of the table, literally and figuratively throughout the process, helping you simplify and expedite that, making sure that, again, you're getting the right service for the right price. And again, hopefully taking a lot of the time drain, especially early on in those projects, off of your plate, which allows you as an IT manager or CIO or CTO or director of infrastructure, whatever your title might be, obviously to focus on the day-to-day.
Yeah, and I would say, how many projects have we done with you over your career? 8, 10, 12, 20?
Yeah, I don't know. It's been over a dozen for sure. Yeah. I don't know the count, but it's definitely been a lot.
Yeah, well, that's I guess one of the biggest compliments we can receive is when someone wants to come back again and again and again and continuously use Tier 4. So, but yeah, grateful to have you as a client, and thanks for the kind words as well.
Cool. All right, so this has been a great episode so far. Hopefully all those who are tuning in are getting a lot of value from Richard attending. Again, thank you for being here. Really, really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to do this. Let's go ahead and spin the wheel and see what random question we've got to answer.
We like number 6. I don't think we ever landed on number 6.
How about number 4? We got number 4. Oh, my God. Got lucky. Biggest pet peeve. I don't know that we've ever asked this question before.
I don't think so.
Joel, we're going to start with you because we're going to let Richard think about what his biggest pet peeve is. Joel?
There's one that immediately comes to mind.
Let's hear it.
And it is people that cut you off, or like cut in line, cut when you're driving, cut when you are standing in line at the supermarket, who just have no idea of kind of personal boundary, personal space, and they happen to cutters. That's my biggest pet peeve.
All right.
I got to say, I don't mean to copy off you, but I thought you were actually going to take what I was going to say, which was people that cut you off, like when you're talking.
There you go.
I think that's probably my biggest pet peeve, honestly.
I hope I don't do that. I was just going to chime in, but then I thought,
you didn't.
I better not. Biggest pet peeve, people that cut. Yeah, me too. Yeah. Good stuff. Pet peeve, I tell you what, I was on an airplane just the other day. Nice to be flying again. There was a lady with her drink and the ice, and it must have been a nervous twitch or something like that. But I got to be honest with you, I have not had my blood boil like that in quite some time. She was shaking her ice cup around for about a 3.5 hour flight. And it was tough. It was tough.
Situational awareness.
That's great.
There you go.
That's a big one.
All right. We've never asked that question before. Would love you to comment on our video. What's your biggest pet peeve?
Indeed. Yeah,
maybe it has something to do with one of us. Who knows?
Some juicy ones coming in a bit.
Oh boy. Keep it G-rated, right? Family show here. Joel, you want to talk a little bit about the second half hopes and dreams of Tier 4 VIP events?
Yep, we had a lot of fun and a lot of success with our VIP golf outings around the country. And we plan on rolling that out to Seattle, Boston, Philly, Miami, a bunch of other places, Atlanta again. So Q3, Q4, keep a lookout for those. tier4advisors.com/events for a VIP event in your market.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Sounds good. Richard, couldn't thank you enough for being here.
Absolutely.
Yes,
yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Very busy.
This has been great.
Great friend to Tier 4. If you or anyone you know has any needs or projects on the horizon in data center, cloud, DR, telecom, what have you, feel free to reach out to us. Again, we're vendor agnostic. We're a subject matter expert in these categories. Help you understand what vendors do what best for what price. Hopefully shrink your time frame down from a 6 to 12 month project internally down to a month or two. We're here to help. We're not going to take every single project that you got, unfortunately, because we're going to specialize in the areas that we specialize in. But again, we are here to help. That's our culture. That's who we are. And that's why we have a net promoter score of 97. So tier4advisors.com or your local regional president or Tier 4 representative. Thanks so much for being here. Joel, Richard, you guys take care.
Until next time.